Forms are one of the most important elements in web development because they allow users to input data. Whether you're signing up for a newsletter, logging into an account, or performing a search, forms are responsible for gathering that user data. Forms in HTML act as a gateway between the user and the server, allowing information to be collected and processed. Without forms, there would be no way for users to interact with many features of a website. So, understanding how to build a form is an essential skill for any web developer. In HTML, a form is created using the form greater than tag. Inside this tag, you'll place various form elements like text fields, radio buttons, checkboxes, submit buttons, and more. Each of these elements allows the user to input data in different ways. For example, a text field allows the user to type information, while a checkbox lets the user select multiple options. You can also control how this data is sent by using attributes in the form greater than tag, like action and method. The action attribute defines where the form's data will be sent, usually a server. The method attribute determines how the data will be sent. The two most common methods are get and post. Get sends the form data as part of the URL, while post sends the data in the request body, making it more secure for sensitive information like passwords. In this video, we're going to break down the basic components of a form, starting with text fields and buttons. Then, we'll explore more advanced elements like checkboxes, radio buttons, and drop-down menus. By the end, you'll have a working knowledge of how to create fully functional forms that allow users to input data. Let's dive into creating your very first form in HTML. Forms are structured using the form greater than tag, and each piece of user input is contained within this tag. For our example, we'll create a simple form that allows users to input their name and email, and then submit the information. The basic structure of a form looks like this. In this example, we're using the input greater than tag to create fields where users can type information. The type attribute defines what kind of input is allowed. For instance, type equals text creates a text input field, and type equals email creates a field specifically for email addresses, which performs basic validation to ensure the input is in the correct format. The id and name attributes are also important. The id attribute associates the input with a specific label using the label greater than tag, improving accessibility for screen readers and ensuring that clicking the label also focuses the input field. The name attribute gives a name to the form data, which is used when submitting the form. Finally, we have the submit button, which is created using the type equals submit input. When a user clicks this button, the form data is sent to the server or the URL specified in the action attribute. If no action is defined, the data will be sent to the same page by default. In this section, we're keeping it simple with just two fields, name and email. But forms can get much more complex. You can add more fields for different types of data, including passwords, phone numbers, and dates. The key is understanding the basic structure, which will allow you to build more complex forms as needed. Text fields are the most commonly used form element. They allow users to input a wide variety of data, including names, email addresses, phone numbers, and passwords. In HTML, you create a text field using the input greater than tag with the type attribute set to text. This will create a single-line input field where users can type their information. You can also use the placeholder attribute to display a hint or example inside the field, helping users understand what kind of data to enter. Here's an example of a basic text input. But text fields aren't the only type of input. HTML offers a variety of input types, each designed for specific kinds of data. For example, you can use type equals email for email addresses, which will automatically validate that the input is in the correct email format. There's also type equals password for password fields, which hides the characters as the user types them in. Using the right input type for each form element is important because it helps the browser validate the user's input and provides a better experience on mobile devices. For instance, on a mobile phone, an email input field will bring up a keyboard specifically designed for entering email addresses, with the @ symbol and dot, easily accessible. Similarly, using type equals tel for phone numbers will bring up a number pad, making it easier for users to input their phone number. HTML forms are all about making user interaction smooth and efficient, and using the correct input types is one of the simplest ways to do this. Now that we've covered basic text fields, Let's move on to radio buttons and checkboxes to key input types that allow users to make selections. While they may look similar, radio buttons and checkboxes serve different purposes in forms. Radio buttons allow users to select only one option from a predefined list. For example, you might use radio buttons in a form to ask users to choose their gender or select a subscription plan. Here's the syntax for creating a group of radio buttons. In this example, both radio buttons share the same name attribute, which ensures that only one can be selected at a time. If a user selects male, and then clicks female, the male button will automatically be deselected. This is how radio buttons work by design, making them perfect for situations where only a single choice should be made. Checkboxes, on the other hand, allow users to select multiple options. For instance, if you want to let users choose multiple interests or hobbies, checkboxes are the ideal choice. Here's how to create a series of checkboxes. In this case, the user can select 1, 2, or all 3 checkboxes, depending on their preferences. Unlike radio buttons, checkboxes don't limit the user to a single choice. They are used when the form allows for multiple selections from a list. While designing forms, it's crucial to decide whether radio buttons or checkboxes are more appropriate, depending on whether you want users to select just one option or several. Radio buttons are typically used for mutually exclusive options, while checkboxes are used for non-exclusive options. Understanding this distinction is key to building intuitive, user-friendly forms. Another essential form element is the drop-down menu, which is created using the select greater than tag. Drop-downs are useful when you have a long list of options and want to save space on your form. For instance, if you're asking for the user's country or state, a drop-down menu allows them to choose from a list of options without overwhelming the interface. The basic structure of a drop-down menu looks like this. In this example, the select element creates the drop-down, and the option greater than tags define the choices available to the user. Each option has a value attribute, which is the data sent when the form is submitted. The text between the opening and closing option greater than tags is what the user sees in the drop-down. You can also specify a default option by adding the selected attribute to one of the option greater than elements. This makes United States the default selection when the form is loaded. However, the user can still open the drop-down and select a different country. Drop-downs are an excellent choice when you want to offer many options without overwhelming the user with a long list of radio buttons or checkboxes. They keep your form clean and user-friendly, allowing the user to focus on the most important elements. Drop-down menus can also be combined with JavaScript to create dynamic, cascading drop-downs. For example, if the user selects a country from one drop-down, another drop-down can automatically update with relevant states or cities based on the selection. This can enhance the interactivity of your forms, providing a more engaging user experience. The last key concept we'll cover in this video is form validation and how to handle form submissions with the Submit button. Form validation ensures that the data entered by the user meets certain criteria before it's sent to the server. For example, you may want to ensure that an email field contains a properly formatted email address or that a password field contains at least 8 characters. HTML5 provides built-in validation for many types of input, saving you the trouble of writing JavaScript for basic checks. Let's take the email input as an example. By setting the type attribute to email, the browser will automatically validate the input. In this case, the required attribute makes the field mandatory. If the user tries to submit the form without entering an email, the browser will display a message prompting them to enter a valid email address. HTML5 supports several other validation rules, including min-length, max-length, pattern, and more. These attributes allow you to set specific requirements for user input without writing complex JavaScript. For example, if you want to ensure that a password field contains at least 8 characters, you can use the min-length attribute like this. Now, the user won't be able to submit the form unless the password meets the length requirement. If the user tries to submit the form without meeting these conditions, the browser will automatically show a validation message, guiding the user on what needs to be corrected. Finally, we have the Submit button. As we saw earlier, the Submit button is what triggers the form submission, sending the data to the server or the URL specified in the action attribute of the form greater than tag. Here's a basic submit button. When the user clicks this button, the browser checks for validation errors. If everything is correct, the form is submitted, and the data is sent to the server. However, if there are validation errors, the browser will prevent the form from being submitted and will highlight the fields that need attention. Understanding how to use validation effectively can significantly improve the usability of your forms, ensuring that you get clean, usable data from your users while providing them with a smooth experience. As we wrap up this lesson on HTML forms, let's review the key concepts covered. Forms are an essential part of any interactive website, allowing users to provide data, whether it's simple contact info or complex survey responses. Mastering HTML forms is crucial because they enable users to interact with your site beyond just viewing content. We began by discussing the structure of forms, starting with the form greater than element, which serves as a container for various input elements. These inputs, such as text fields, radio buttons, and checkboxes, each serve a unique purpose in gathering data efficiently. We then explored text inputs, focusing on single-line fields for short responses like names and emails, and multi-line text areas for more detailed responses. You also learned how to use attributes like placeholder to enhance the user experience. Next, we covered radio buttons and checkboxes. Radio buttons allow a single selection from a group, while checkboxes let users select multiple options. Understanding when to use each makes your forms more intuitive. We also introduced the drop-down menu, created with the select greater than element. Drop-downs are perfect for offering many choices without cluttering the form, and you now know how to set default values to guide users. One of the most important topics we touched on was form validation. You learned how HTML5's built-in validation features, such as required and type, help ensure users submit accurate data. These features save time by preventing incomplete or incorrect submissions. Finally, we discussed the submit button, which initiates the form submission process. This button sends the data to the server or processes it through JavaScript, completing the form's function. By now, you should have a strong grasp of how to structure forms, choose the right input types, and validate the data users submit. Forms are a powerful tool that can significantly enhance the interactivity of your website. In the next video, we'll cover advanced form techniques, including styling, managing form data with JavaScript, and creating more complex validation rules. Keep practicing by building different forms like contact pages or registration forms. With time, you'll master creating forms that look great and function perfectly on your sites. Thanks for watching, stay tuned for the next video, and as always, happy coding!